Today on Tricrow Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between the orange Rockerverb 100 Mark III and the Marshall JVM 410H. Now, I would like to reiterate here, this is a high gain amp shootout, so you're not going to hear any cleans, any mild breakups, any soft jazz or anything like that. It's more high gain geared towards metal. But I do have two sound samples for you today. The first of which is a more balanced EQ setting in drop C, whereas the second one is a more scooped setting in drop B. I've also boosted the orange Rockerverb where I have not boosted the JVM 410H. Alright, so there you go. There are the two sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the orange Rockerverb 100 Mark III and the Marshall JVM 410H. It's at this point in the video where I like to go over kind of what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. The most important thing to me was seeing kind of British versus British. So you're hearing a lot of mids and just a lot of mids and such. Both amps do really, really well with adding in their low end and their high end. I find that the Rockerverb, a lot of people boost it. I generally, if I'm doing high gain, I'll always boost it. That's kind of, to me, where you're going to get a little more of that high end coming into a high gain tone. I do feel that both amps kind of match very well. So going from one to the other, there's not like this really stark difference or anything like that. Like you're not going to go, whoa, okay, you know, going from the Rockerverb to the JVM 410H. It's not this giant difference. It's little subtle things that you can find. So in that respect, I guess you could say they do sound somewhat similar, but they're British amps, so they're voiced a specific way. Both of these amps as well are very, very versatile, so you don't have to use, like, you're not buying one or the other just for high gain. You can actually get a ton of sounds through both of them. The reverb on the Rockerverb 100 Mark III here is very, very nice analog reverb, whereas the JVM 410H, even though it has the 4 channels and you have reverb selections for each individual channel, so 4 types of reverb, you do have a digital reverb here. So I know that's not really something that you take into consideration for high gain, except for perhaps lead work. But sometimes that digital reverb does come into play where it's not as pleasing as an analog reverb. The JVM 410H is definitely a little more versatile than the Rockerverb 100. The Rockerverb 100 is a little odd when you're going from almost any other amp to it. There's no presence, there's no resonance or anything like that. But each individual tone knob or knob is clickable, so it's not like this smooth transition. It's actually it's kind of notched out, so it's like sort of like a 1073 or anything like that. But it can take a little bit of time to get used to, because you don't have that necessarily like finesse movement, I guess you would say. When you're trying to get like just a little more gain, or you know, like balance that gain with the volume. Doesn't mean that it's not a good amp or anything like that. It's actually a phenomenal amp. It's one of my favorites. But it's something that you do have to get used to, that kind of always working with that balance. The JVM 410H, I'm colorblind, by the way. Like, I'm partially colorblind, and that's probably why, you know, it probably looks really weird, because I do the color correction and everything. So I don't know what channel I'm on, other than I always like OD1, and I think it's the first setting for OD1. I could be wrong. But each individual channel has 3 different like colors, so 3 different types of sounds that it has. So it's a 4-channel amp, but there's 3 settings per channel, or 3 different types per channel. So it gives you a heck of a lot of versatility and different sounds that you can get. With that being said, just because like these are the sounds that I went with today for those specific types of Les Pauls. I could be playing something different, like a different guitar or something else, or I could just have a different feeling, so I would go with a completely different sound. So these, I find these are like people, they're like main amps, and they're considered expensive. So when I do videos like these, I know that there's going to be someone like, yeah, maybe dial out some of the low end on here or whatever. So I mean, I do kind of anticipate people saying like, oh, well, you know, I would have dialed it in a little different, or used this setting or used this setting, which it's me, it's what I went with at the time because that's what I liked. One other thing that I do find funny, I do also anticipate, because what I find when it comes to like more budget-friendly amps, you'll generally hear the same thing, like those are those people's amps, and they'll be like, well, you know, especially like the Valve King or whatever. I find with the lower budget or budget-friendly amps, you get the same thing. It's always like, yeah, throw an EQ in the loop, and you know, you've got the best amp in the world. Where it comes to more expensive amps like these, you don't generally get that. You generally get like, yeah, have you tried Mullard tubes, or have you tried, you know, I change this tube from this position to this tube, whatever. So that's generally what you get. So more budget-friendly amps, people usually say, you know, put an EQ in the loop or boost the effects loop or whatever, you know, like the cheaper way of getting different sounds, I guess. Whereas more expensive amps, you get people saying like, well, you know, my exact sound is taking this tube and doing this. So either way, I don't want to talk anymore. Thanks for watching.